Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Bonilla, as I'm co-host for Studio Bridge. So, welcome to another episode of the Artist Spotlight, and I am super excited to welcome Glenn Southern onto the podcast. So, Glenn, thanks so much uh, for coming in
No
and
worries.
agreeing to talk. So, I guess I wanted to start off with just telling the people who you are, and just kind of like a quick background before I start peppering you with questions.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can do quick. That's the only problem, but I'll
I
try my
know.
best. So I'm Glenn Southern. I run a little tiny company in the UK called Southern GFX, which obviously comes from my name. And basically, I'm an artist by trade. So my core skill is a digital sculptor. So that's what I do the most of. So that's what I call myself. I am obviously a company director. I run a company with staff, but I don't really that isn't really me. That's just a means to an end for me. It's just evolved from freelancing into a company with regular clients. But the core of what we do, or what I do, is currently it's quite mixed because I'm a very diverse person. So, but I'll break it down as simply as I can, and we'll get into it in the chat. So, one, I do a bit of artwork for clients. So I do modeling, sculpting, painting, concepts, all kinds of those kind of things, and that's usually in mostly in film, TV, often in advertising, broadcast TV. Good range of any kind of company that needs assets. Digital assets is what we call them. The second part of the stream there is that I teach that stuff. So whatever I say that I am talking about, I generally teach it. And then there's the third part of it really, which is getting out and about and getting people into what we do. So the inspiration side of it. So I work with tons of companies where I try and get out and kind of influence either young artists or new artists, certainly not just youngsters, because I'm big on getting people into the creative space at any age, literally any age. And obviously I'm cruising down towards the end of my career really, so it's really nice to be giving back. So that's probably what we do now mostly. Where that came from is a long journey really. So I started with 3D modeling at the start, literally 91 is when I started, so we'll probably cover some of that. So I was there modeling right at the very beginning really. And then that shaped a lot of what I am and what I do. So yeah, hopefully we'll cover that as we get through the conversations.
Yeah, for sure. So, starting out, um, just going through kind of your art station. Did you start out? Obviously, you started out as a 2D background because you draw a lot,
Yeah.
and I came across you through your Nomad tutorials. Then I realized that you had been teaching ZBrush for like a quarter century. But talk to me about kind of like your background. Did you study? You go to school for like
No,
illustration or fine art or?
no. I mean, I did later. I've got qualifications later on in life, but bear in mind, again, my age and longevity. So I left school at 15, which was the early 1980s. So when I left school, I didn't even really have a path. I left with virtually no qualifications. I knew I was an avid artist at that point, but I despised the establishment. I didn't like art school. I only had two real loves, and one was art and one was wildlife of one kind or another, whether that be plants or animals or whatever. And that hasn't changed. That's still me. Um, and you hear people say they had like a troubled childhood or a difficult upbringing, or they were rallying against the system. And I wasn't. I just had a great life. I had a great life then, and I have a great life. I'm very privileged with the fact that I've got a lovely family. All my family and parents aren't with us anymore, but again, they were very old and happy when they passed. So I came out of school not knowing which path I would take. It could easily have been forest ranger. It could have been something along the plant and animal side of it, or it could have been art. And as it happens, I just went straight into a little course teaching stop motion. So literally plasticine, doing some film, and that's literally at 15. So I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But yeah, even at that point, I was drawing almost every day. I was probably sculpting with plasticine. My dad was always sculpting with clay, so that he got me into that at a very early age. My sister's very craft orientated. My brother's a designer. He's a steelwork designer and runs a company designing buildings, not architecture, but the steelwork side of it. So that's where my 3D background came in. My path probably would have been going onto the drawing boards as a draftsman if I'd have followed in his footsteps. So I started on my own little path doing a little bit of stop motion, and then went straight into a company that my brother was in, and he was a draftsman. And I went into the print department and then just started printing for the draftsman, which would lead me on to becoming a draftsman. And I was still only very young, that was 15, 16, 17, and I was having a whale of a time earning money, forget college, forget anything else. I was just getting on with life, really. Had a quite steady girlfriend, even at that early age. And then that just rolled into buying a house at kind of like 19, and kind of like the responsibilities came too quickly for me in some ways. And that all kind of collapsed around me as I went into my 20s. But at that point, I was really happy with the illustrating for magazines, doing what they used to call play-by-mail games, where people would send in their stats for the game to a central board, and they would physically get mailed back the results, but they needed artwork to go with that. So I was doing a lot of that, making a bit of money doing that. I had a printer. Back then I had a physical, what they called an Adana 8x5 printer. If you want to look that up, it actually had typeset on it. So I used to print.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it literally had, if you look it up, or anyone who's interested in old tech, you can still get them on eBay now. And you used to have to set it, and then you'd make really cool business cards that were like handcrafted. So you'd call it Etsy stuff today, but I was doing it at 15, 16, 17, bit of a little entrepreneur kind of deal there. So that's where I started. I knew I was going to be an artist, as in I didn't think of myself as an artist. I was just doing art and enjoying it, and I knew at that point that I have this thing about people who are artistic is that we have to do it whether we want to do it or not. And if you don't do it, it burns, and that. Again, I don't want to say depression, because I've never been depressed, but I do have cycles of emotion that leave me very low. And then I also have very high highs without ever needing drugs or anything. I get my highs in a very specific creative way. And I've learned what that cycle is for me. So I accept the lows and I take the highs, and I'm thankful for them. So I'm lucky that my family are, they're not all like me, but they all appreciate that, that art is a part of that. Forget the money, forget the success, or I don't need people to say, "Oh, your art is amazing." That's never really been my thing. My buzz comes from the act of creation, and that still stands today. Adding the teaching, and that's still me today. That's me.
That's awesome. So during your upbringing, who were your influences, like artistically? Were you looking at any artists? I mean, because you said stop motion. I mean, so I originally, before I got into painting, I'd want to become an animator. So like I obsessed over Ray Harryhausen. Willis O'Brien, like all the old school kind of like stop motion, and Phil Tippett, and just like, I loved all of that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you've nailed a couple of the big ones. If you go right back, I grew up. I was born in '67, so by the time Star Wars was there, which was 10 years later, everything that had come before that in terms of like King Kong and 2001 for the sci-fi stuff, and creature stuff is Jason and the Argonauts, Harry Howe, that was special effects, and I absolutely adored it. That from a practical point of view, going into Dragon Slayer with Disney when that eventually came out, and those were the worlds I lived in, and I still do. I haven't really changed. That's kind of like what I wanted to do. With some tweaks, it's usually about creatures, characters, environments, not so much the cars, not so much the buildings so much. And definitely, I do go into sci-fi, and I was always into the shape of spaceships, and just trying to think of the sci-fi epics that kind of like really inspired me. Star Wars was never huge with me, not in the way that people would think. It was big, but it was never the biggest thing. Space 1999, a British TV show, that was one for
Oh
me.
yeah.
It's like where the moon breaks away from the Earth. Doctor Who, a lot of. I'm just trying to think of the main ones that I was probably, because bear in mind we were watching this on, at best, from the early 80s. Best would have been a VHS player. Prior to that, it's just TV. 3 channels is all we had. Yeah, pretty still. I had a big. My family are big readers, and I was, as much as I didn't start actually reading heavily early on. I wasn't reading fantasy early on. I was well into my encyclopedias. I was always diving into bird books. I've actually got it in my school reports where Glenn could actually be successful if he'd actually just pay attention and stop reading bird books, and it's actually all there. I haven't changed. So yeah,
But
influences like that, and then from a painting point of view, I was watching, going into the Bob Ross years. I used to love it. Going into um, uh, I was huge into D&D. So any of the D&D artists, any of the
yeah.
war later on the Warhammer artists, not the game. I was never really into the gaming side of it, but any of the pencil work and anything creaturey, charactery. That was it. That was what was getting me at the time, And we didn't get to the cinema that much. I remember big epics for me were things like Lord of the Rings, the animated version. I remember that
Yeah.
having a profound effect on me early on, and that's what got me to read Lord of the Rings back in the day. So yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of influences like that. Yeah.
that's so interesting. I mean, like I'm kind of the same way with D&D and Warhammer, and I just love the production art. I have I couldn't tell you a single rule from that game, but I've watched. I mean, the amount of artwork that I have saved from the game, you would think that I was just obsessed with it, but I don't own a single model or anything like that. It's
Yeah,
like
it's
kind of
great.
like are you familiar with like James Bama by any chance?
Yeah,
Like the old like the illustrators that did all of the monster box art, for the
yeah.
classic horror monsters and things like that. I would just obsess all that stuff, but it was all always like kind of about the art. So
Exactly
the
that. Yeah.
so you were doing so the illustration around the 80s. So that was kind of almost like the epicenter of also like 2000 AD, and Marvel kind of moved in there.
Yeah, I
And
was
you have
just
people
going to
like,
go in. Yeah, I was just literally going
yeah,
to step into the other, the second big set of influences. Not Marvel. I've got to be honest. I always rallied against the Marvel kind of world for some reason. I didn't
mhm,
like, as much as I did like Spider-Man. I didn't like what Marvel. I didn't like the stuff that was coming out of Marvel. I didn't like the storylines. Not at that point anyway. I
right,
was very much about British. There was another comic called Star Lord that was in the 70s that got to about 32 issues, and then it was bought out by 2000 AD and it amalgamated, and that brought Strontium Dog and some of the real hero characters, and
yeah,
Rogue Trooper, and that mashed in a load of new content into 2000 AD, and that was really, I knew quite a few people who were moving in those circles. I had a friend in London who was close to the comic circle, so we used to go to Soho and hang around people who were quite famous in that world back then. So I still
wow,
stalk them now. I still go to. There's a comic festival in the Lake District called LICAF, which is the Lakes International Comic Festival, something like that. And it's not really like anything it's nothing like Comic Con or anything like that. It's just really the guys and girls that do the drawing. It's really the illustrators. So it's, that's a special place because you get to meet your heroes and, and go and sit with them and literally talk about the characters and, really, get deep into what they were doing back then. A lot of them are just bitter old men now, which is great because I'm getting there. So it's great. It's great for them to reminisce about the good old days. And, I was there in the good old days as the buyer, I was the one that was buying their output and,
Right.
So yeah, that was a big influence. That still is a big influence on me today. I don't collect any comics as such, but I've got friends who are 2000 AD artists, and I do follow the comic trends a little bit, although I don't follow any storylines. So
yeah, I mean so there. I could totally see where one would gravitate towards 2000 AD. I mean, I loved all the stuff coming out, and also the role as a comic book artist was a little different, for that era. I mean, they were like kind of like our tours in a sense. It was much darker, edgier.
yeah.
They're very tongue in cheek in a dark kind of it's like dark humor,
Oh yeah, and a lot of hidden metaphor and a lot of angst that was going on in the 70s and 80s is hidden in there. You can, there's a Nemesis story that's got a load of like how Britain's kind of like fallen. It's not Britain, but the analogies are there. And, Dredd is obviously like this authoritarian figure and it's all there. If you go back and read it now, it feels odd.
Right.
With our messy world at the minute, but it's all there. It was all, the miners' strikes in the UK, the power going off, and everything's there. It's I do go back every now and again, and we kind of like reminisce and look, and it's quite frightening how we think we're in a world today that's like never happened. We've never been this bad. We've never had these wars. We've never had this problem. Actually, it's literally no different. It's exactly the same with different names and different faces. It's quite. I was watching a documentary last night about the 70s and people going on about we've never had fuel at this price and the war in the Middle East is this and the politicians are corrupt and all and like, yeah, it's pretty much we're still here. It's
right.
Still
heartbreaking. Yeah. I mean, but it's you could totally see like I mean, I know especially that time just where the where people have YouTube now or they have different areas of expression, independent comic books and small publishing. That was like the punk rock
absolutely
of art at that point. So like just aesthetically just influenced so much. I mean, you could still feel it today. I mean, I love all the artists from that time. I mean, Brian Boland, Dave Gibbons. I mean, like, I watch. I look. It's just like there are so many of them.
Yeah, it's amazing, and they're still there. They're all apart from the poor ones we've lost. Dave Gibbons was a Wacom evangelist with me. When I first found that out, it was like, oh my god! I was like, I nearly felt sick because it was him.
Right.
And there's right. Simon Bisley's still out there doing it and doing.
Yeah.
They're all still kicking it. They're all there and they're all still living the dream and moaning about it, which is great.
That's great. So
yeah, it still influences me. It still definitely has an influence on me. That gritty early British, and that led into a lot, didn't it? I mean that led us to the Neil Gaimans of this world and the Glenn Fabry's and it gave us what we've got today. That when you look at the shoulder, on the shoulders of giants, what McFarlane did with Spawn was a rally against the Marvel world. So that's just another trajectory. And if you go back and you follow it all, you can you get back to that early Marvel DC and Marvel was ripping off DC from the 40s, 50s. It's all there. It's the history of what make us. And we forget. I think we just, we forget because there's so much stuff to deal with, content and visual candy. And we forget where we came from in those worlds.
Yeah, it's interesting how like I have to remind myself that most people don't remember Marvel when they were just a comic house. Yeah. And it was like everything was direct to mail and it's just like they were cartoons here and there, but it wasn't like the behemoth that they are today, where they're mostly known for their movies.
Completely different company. Yeah. It's evolved and all of the sales and like selling off they were in such a bad shape that they sell off Spider-Man and the X-Men and all that, and then I'm like, oh my god, we need it back. And
Right.
now suddenly it's not 10 million, it's 10, like a
That,
hundred
yeah.
million or whatever,
Right. Right. So, when did you start getting into? Were you always like get into the early phases of digital art when stuff first came out? I'm always interested in talking to artists around that time because it was like you could like I'm a bit of like I love history and I love how like workflows have changed over time and how they haven't. They're just kind of updated, and so seeing like the genesis of digital art, um, seeing it from in hindsight, you could see it starting to slowly migrate, but there were some early adopters and some people that just held off until the very end. I mean, what was it like? Kind of, how did you come across that when you were?
Yeah, so I am an early adopter to some degree, and I'm definitely an early adopter in that. I'm more cautious now. I generally I look as an early adopter, and then I make a choice whether I've got the staying power to go through the early days. But with digital art, I was there in the 80s. If I'm honest with you, looking at what Lasseter was doing with Pixar and what he was doing on those very, very early tests when he was with Lucas and when he was, when him and Catmull, they hired him in.
Yeah.
Looking at that I've literally got videos from the late 80s going, I want a bit of that, but I don't know where I fit in with that. I've got to make a living. I can't see how I could ever get into that. And a couple of big provisos with me is I always knew I would never be an animator because I'm lazy. I don't have the staying power. I tried it, and I'm okay at it, and I understand it, and I love the principles, and I appreciate it. But I would never, ever, ever say I'm an animator. And also, like you just said about comic, but I always knew I couldn't do panels. I saw people that were, breaking under the strain of, turning around panels. I always knew those weren't things I would do. So I was lucky that I made those choices early. So when computers came along, in terms of, when I say computers, when we had access to a computer that could do something visual, for me, it was the Amiga. So the Amiga 1200 in probably, I don't know if it was 90, maybe 89, 90, when it was first becoming a thing. And there was a program on there. I literally remember it. There was a program on there called Deluxe Paint, which meant you could sort of like move your mouse around and literally paint with 64 colors, which is coming from green screens. I mean, that's insane. 64 colors in a palette, and you could make your own palettes. So you could go, like do your browns and do a gradient of 6 and do your reds and your greens. And I've got artwork. I'll try and dig it out for you to show you some of the pixel art. It wasn't pixel art. It was proper digital art with 64 colors. So it definitely doesn't look like pixel art. It just looks like very, very early digital painted art. And then that was it. Then that was kind of the disease was in there. I was right. I can do this on a screen, and I can do it. I mean, I started with a mouse, but literally within months, I bought what was called a light pen, which doesn't. I mean, you can't even find the reference.
God, yeah, one of those.
Like a box on the end of a stick on a wire.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So,
I remember seeing old like video of that. I'm thinking like, wow, that is like amazing.
It's
and
mad.
Like even deluxe paint. I remember the pictures of like the birth of Venus, like, and to be able to like recreate that digitally was like,
it's mad. I look back now and it's like bonkers, absolutely bonkers. So, that had the Amiga had a program called Organica, I think it was, which basically allowed me to sort of like put a pyramid and a sphere into a scene, and I'm like, this is Pixar for me now. When I say Pixar, if you remember, they had something called Wally-B, I think, which was their test way before. Way before Toy Story. Yeah. And that's where I was
thinking. Do you remember their Listerine commercials?
Yeah. Well, that's how they were.
Was that wild? Yeah. Right.
The only money they made was those commercials. They weren't making any other money, were they? Even under, it's mad to think how poor that they would have been at that stage. Right. They just begging money off Lucas, and then obviously eventually off Jobs for 10 years. But
so for those not familiar, like Pixar was basically like a special research group that was formed at ILM to explore graphics, like to the future of computer graphics and stuff. And so people like Ed Catmull and John Lasseter was the first artist they hired, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. They
But
didn't need an artist because they couldn't do anything
right,
artistic. Yeah, yeah.
right, right. So they, they were just doing tests and just trying to see what, how they could conceptualize like how graphics could be used in, how the computer could factor into it. And I know that they had, and I remember when I was a kid seeing they had done an animated Listerine, computer animated Listerine commercial. And I remember I was like, my mind was blown that I
Yeah.
was like, is this like a movie, a Listerine movie? But it was like a commercial, and it was actually the Pixar. But
Yeah, it's
sorry, I
crazy.
didn't mean to. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they
Anyway,
did the Genesis scene for Star Trek Wrath of Khan where the planet gets overtaken, and that was
oh no
obviously.
way, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were on that was in the Lucas era. So I don't know if Lasseter was involved in that. If you read it, I think
Oh,
one of the history books it covers all that era, and it shows you the things that they were working on that yeah. So you can see the evolution of what their tech was doing, but there was no character, there was no way of animating it was all
right.
um it was all NURBS at the so NURBS are for listeners that don't know, what we've got now is generally polygons. What they were working with were splines, so very CAD or technical drawing kind of type of software. So they're splines basically. So even up to Toy Story was still splines. It wasn't what we know now as modeling with polygons. So how the heck they got through the animation, it just I still don't get it. I still, that I think that is what really has influenced me the most is that mix of art with tech with creatures. That's me today. That's all I do. So I think Catmull and what he eventually did with subdivision algorithms, Lasseter with his facts, the fact that he was pivotal in getting characters on the screen. Um, Obviously Lucas that was backing it all, and then Jobs. That world is probably what got me to where I am really.
Wow, wow. So
Yeah, so
you
that
were working on like a digital deluxe paint, and then you went to Organica, and so you were just marching your way. It seemed like you were marching your way towards kind of like running in parallel
yeah,
with
I was just
like all of
watching it.
those
I mean,
developments.
yeah, it was. I mean, the big. There's a couple of big pivotal moments back then. So one, my brother got 3D Max or 3D Studio as it was called. It wasn't Max back then. In '91, so I was seeing buildings being made in 3D, which is basically like an AutoCAD package, but it's got polygons in it. So that me jumping on that in downtime, that blew my mind. That got me into understanding the polygonal side of it, even though it wasn't rounded. There was no what then became meta NURBS in Lightwave, and there was no. It was just blocky, but actually it was a model, and we could throw lights on it. And then I'm like, right, this is more than just drawing now. This is more than I've got a path here, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't make that into a career at that point. I'd run out of money. I got a house as a kid. I was still a kid, I was like early 20s. I look at my boy at 19, and I'd be terrified if he had a house now. It'd be on fire in a day. But I was quite, my era. We were mature at 20. We had to be. We just I just feel like it was a different world in that respect. But so I went and I couldn't make money. I couldn't make enough money, so I just went and got a job in a supermarket, or I was all kinds of different jobs, as well as doing the illustrating. I never stopped the art, but it wasn't making enough to pay a mortgage and keep me happy and keep me going. So yeah, so unfortunately I did well in that. In the supermarket led to another job, and before I knew it, so this is like mid kind of like 90s, I was in like an executive position. I was mid-20s, I was earning good money, um doing something I didn't want to do, but I was learning to be with people. I was learning the soft skills, and I still maintain that that's what probably 50% of why I've been successful is the people side of it. And I do spout that a lot to my students and to a lot of people that I hang around. Is that you've got to be able to look people in the eye and talk and negotiate and, you know, and take a hit sometimes. And you learn all that in a real world, and certainly in a say, you know, when you're in front of customers or with people. So yeah, that went on for a long time. But in the background, in the 3D and my drawing side of things, after Jurassic Park, which kind of like cemented, right, that is it, I'm doing that. You know, Terminator came through, and then, you know, Toy Story was a big success, and then, you know, through to 97, where we got like Jerry's Game, which was another Pixar short where they used polygons that were subdivided. That cemented my life. Once what Pixar had done with Edwin Catmull's algorithms and you know, the other fella, Jim, whatever his name is, the guys that, you know, really gave us those algorithms, that meant we could do organic characters. So 97, 98, 99 is when I was following people like Bay Ray on Gollum. You know, you did the work on Gollum, obviously.
Oh yeah.
People like Ken Brilliant, people who are, you know, what I desperately wanted to be, and I didn't even know what they were. I didn't know what the job was. It wasn't a CG modeler's role. There just wasn't anything there. There was obviously concept art, and there was Cameron was doing his thing with, you know, he'd moved on to things like, you know, to Titanic by then. So I'm seeing digital doubles. I knew the world was there. I just didn't know how to do it. And I'm making money in the normal world. You know, I've got a bigger house now, and I've got I got divorced and remarried, and, you know, my life changed around, got kids at this point, and I'm like, right, I've got to sort this out. I've got to really move into it. So that's when I started to settle in really with Lightwave and with Maya. That's when I knew that modeling was my thing. That was when I knew I could do my own drawings. I could then realize them in 3D, and I could do something with them. And I got loads of little jobs. And even though I had a day job, I was the epitome of a hobbyist. You know, but I kept it up. And then the big thing happened really, which was in 99 at SIGGRAPH, they launched an alpha of ZBrush, and that was it. That I was kind of like, that was it. I was over the edge at that point. Once I saw it on a magazine cover, and I'm like, right, this is gonna, you know, I've got to do this. This is what I've got to do. There was no sub tools. You couldn't have multiple models in the same way, but you could literally model, you know, with a pen by then, you know, a Wacom, but even back then, and I could make stuff, and that was it. That's why I've got such a long legacy with Pixologic. You know, I kind of like got a relationship. They contacted me because I posted some artwork on a forum back then, and I did all the early ZBrush posters. So I did the 1.2 posters for the magazines, and
no way.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll send you the artwork. I've still got it also. So I'm good friends with Jaime Labelle, who's the main guy behind, the guy that writes it. You know, I'm like, you know, I went over, you know, got to know his family. You know, we became friends. So I have my loyalty to Pixologic and ZBrush is way beyond the fact that I like it. You know, it became my life back. This is way before it became popular. Nobody even knew what to do with it at that point. That you couldn't really get it out in a way that was like it is today. But, you know, I saw the evolution of normal maps and the evolution of displacement coming through. You know, and then, you know, second Lord of the Rings comes along, and you know, Pixologic, you know, ZBrush is heavily involved in that with the trolls, and then there's a big rift, and like, you know, Dave Cardwell goes off and makes Mudbox down with Weta, and that brings a new, you know, a fight and a, you know, bit of tension in the marketplace, which is great. And that's it. It kind of like starts the ball rolling for, you know, for digital sculpting. It is a thing now, you know, by 2002, 2003. And that's it. Boom. It was, you know, it's off. You know, Alex Alvarez has started Nomon by now. So there's actually a school to do this stuff. You know, in the UK, we've got the beginnings of a film industry that's using this stuff on the back of stuff like, you know, Titanic and all of that kind of history. So yeah, there's a world, and I'm stuck in another environment here. I'm stuck in a very normal life, but
right.
I was making DVDs. I was making $5,000 a month doing DVDs on ZBrush. So I
Wow.
knew that I could do it. I just didn't know how to back out of my other life, you know. So it took us a few more years to go, right. Let's take some money out of this other life and let's start a new life. And that's, you know, by 2006, I went over to LA, and I had a couple of, people will tell you, and people listening will get, there's the odd light bulb moment in your life where, um, I mean, I'm not a religious guy, and I'm not as much as I make monsters and ghosts and whatever for a living. I don't believe in ghosts. I'm a very tangible kind of guy. You know, I'm very much what you see is what you get kind of in the world. But I've had moments where it does push you to the limit of, I get things that happen to me that people say I'm extremely lucky. And I just say, well, I go to a lot of places, so I get the chance of a lot of luck because I'm with a lot of people at the right time. And I got an email from a guy saying, "Hey, I'm JJ Abrams. I'm making a show called Lost. I learned ZBrush from your DVDs. Can we work together?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course we can. You know, I'll come over to LA like you do. You know." I was working in some shitty job. I don't know whether I can swear. You can edit
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's fine.
I'm
Yeah.
working in some job, and I'm like, yeah. So I rings Jaime over at Pixelogic. I'm like, this dude's rung me, texted me, or emailed me. Sorry, I still have the email now because it's the one that broke me. It's the one that sent me. So I'm like in it, and I'm like, he says he's made the show. Now I know Alias, but I don't know about this Lost thing. And he's like, you idiot! It's actually him. He's like, get over here, do it. He says, I'll take you over there. So I got over there and did a stint at did a show at Nomon while I was there. So I did, I had Rick Baker in the audience, and Neville
Wow.
Page was there, and Meets Myers, and all of the guys that I dreamed of meeting one day. Tauron was there, if you know him. So we had Maddie Spencer was there. It's just a world of people who are super famous in that world now, and it just being there for that bit was enough. But then going and meeting JJ and getting an offer off him, and that I couldn't take that offer, but it changed my life. We had some personal tragedies at that point when my mum passed away. So going off to Hawaii at the point, and going off to change my life like that wasn't going to be for me at that stage. But what it did was it went, right, that's it now. If this dude thinks you can do it, then you've got to go and do it. You can't keep not doing it. And that was it, really. That was within a matter of months, really, of sorting the family out with mum passing. That was the pivotal moment. That was like, right, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to set up a company. And I literally just went and set a company up. I took some money out of my old career. My wife kind of bore the brunt of the living expenses. She's a HR exec, so she was coming through the ranks, and she was quite stable with money. So that allowed me to put some money aside while I start my career, and that was it. Went and got some freelance jobs, and boom, never stopped, really. Just been running ever since. But yeah, those kind of pivotal moments, they whether you take them or not, the confidence comes with the opportunity, and I think that was one of the big ones for me. And I a lot of those people I've just talked about, if they got in trouble now, I'd get on the plane now. I'd go and help them. It's nothing to do with, do you like Blender or do you like ZBrush? Or, well, no, I kind of like the people. I kind of like grew up with these people that, if that's what I'm about, and that's what I'm still about. So, and I encourage my students to do that. Is you build your relationships, and the rest comes, really.
So that's how. So you got into teaching by doing those DVDs for ZBrush, or was that's? I mean, that was like kind of your first teaching experience.
That's the first digital teaching I ever did. So I
okay.
No YouTube, back in obviously before YouTube, I think that was 2000 when it came along. So there was nothing that there was online. You could sell DVDs is the only, and then it became a stream. This is there was no streaming because we were on dial up. Nobody could stream back then. So it grew very quickly. So I remember all that happening. I think my DVDs are still on Amazon, and they get terrible reviews because I think one of the reviews said, looks like it's done at the kitchen table. I'm like, yeah, well, it was. It literally was. So, I didn't have a studio or anything like that. So
wow. Yeah. So you were doing that basically after your full-time job, and managing a family on top of
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah. Nobody
it's
in the full-time
unbelievable.
job knew. Yeah, no, I was a suit by that point. I was driving around in a fancy car. I was flying around the country twice a week. I was covering a big region. I was living literally. I was living a double life, and I didn't hate the work because I was with a lot of people, and I learned a lot of. I was good at talking to big crowds. I could start new teams. I did a lot of new openings for where I would do the recruitment and help and build it, put a team together. I learned all those soft skills that helped me run a company later. Um, so yeah, those skills are as valuable, if not more valuable, if I'm honest. When I later on, when I started my own company, I realized I had to go into some studios. So I went into, especially in Ireland, I went and did a lot of film studios where I had to just sort of like come down a level and just go in and just be a grunt. But luckily, I could draw. I could model. I was at a good enough level to go in and do movie assets very early on, and definitely do concepts. And I could help people realize ideas early on. But I had to step down a grade to kind of just get those opportunities. But what very quickly comes out in those environments is that you can handle people and you can handle producers and coordinators and you can, I used to get I've got some really batty stories I could tell you but I used to end up getting in with directors because I could handle the conversation because I was a bit more mature. So I'll give you one because I don't want to keep us too far on these
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
So I went over to Lithuania to work on Dungeons and Dragons 2. So and it was a very, very small team. And the guy that brought me over there, he's just one of the best dinosaur sculptors out there. Julian Johnson Mortimer, his name is. If you look him up, he's got the best stuff on Instagram and YouTube. But the director was a guy called Jerry Lively, who'd done the later Hellraiser films. And there was like they had this scene at the start of the film where there was a couple of kobold shaman, doing this spell and what have you. And I'm like, well, they're like little goblin-y dudes. They're not going to be like what you want here. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you can't have those as that. They can't be that character. They can't do what you're saying there. You need this. And I went and did a bit of research and thought about it. And I went, right, you need a lizard man, and it needs to be a lizard man shaman. So you can put them in a cloak and it's cheaper for the effects. And so anyway, they went in the movie, and then I did the dragons. I did the ice dragon and that, and did and it's to my shame, it's not the best movie, but I don't care really because you just learn to operate with, the directors are just humans. You think of them, they just want what they want, and if you're the person that can give it, they don't care who you are. So yeah, I've got loads of little stories like that. I've learning my craft really just by getting in there and diving in there. So.
Well, that's the thing. Like people don't. I guess you don't understand until you're actually working about how much communication skills matter and how people just want to work with people that are easy to work with, and there's no kind of gap between communication and trying to get their point across, and everyone's just marching efficiently towards an end goal. So you had that going in, which is a huge thing because when you come out of, art school itself doesn't really prepare you for that at all. I mean, like it's like you're an artist. This is your art, and that's it. That's your vision. But like when you're working as a team, it's the opposite of that. It's like it's a unified vision, and so
it's very very different.
Yeah, and I'm so you doing that. I mean, you coming in from your background, I'm not surprised that was you got to have that much influence over something like that, but so when you left your job, you were doing movie assets, trying to get whatever jobs in studios that you could get now. And were you still doing the ZBrush teaching at that point as well?
Yeah, I was going out to companies. I went out to one called Ninja Theory, which is the first Heavenly Sword game over in Cambridge. There was big teams of Malaysian and Korean artists who couldn't speak the language, but they needed them to be using ZBrush. So I'd go over with interpreters and train it in. I was taking anything really of that, anything that was creative in that space. I would do it. So and it didn't really matter whether it was film, game, TV, whatever. If it's ZBrush, if it's digital sculpting, people want it. So yeah, I did that. I still do that now. If I get a phone call today about a specific company that needs a specific set of training, then I'll write the course and I'll go and do it. I'm just back from Lego teaching Nomad, believe it or not, and I've been to Lego over in Denmark before teaching ZBrush. So, those relationships matter because they come back to you, and that's exciting because that gets me to meet a lot of people. It gets me out,
right?
Meet a ton.
And so, around that time, what was like so ZBrush, I guess was rising in popularity. I mean, I came about it. I saw it like around 2006.
Yeah.
And by that point, for all intents and purposes, it was really pretty evolved, and it was being used normally. But I mean, I thought it was like unbelievable how you just sculpt digitally. What was as you got into the industry, what were the workflow trends? How were they changing as you saw them?
Well, from my point of view, I mean, visual effects became an industry, but from sort of like the late 90s, I mean, it's still evolving now, but the stuff that was getting turned out back then was insane. You had little road crews doing things like trying to think of good examples. Do you remember like the first Riddick film?
Yeah.
What was that called? I forget what it's called, but that was a rogue crew in London, just shooting out the shots. So it got out of Hollywood quite quickly, and as the power of you gone from Sun Microsystems, and you suddenly you've got these Intel machines that can handle it, and you've got it was always still the rendering that was the problem, which I never ever got into, and I still am not into rendering now. I always have people around me who are better than me in that world. Excuse me, sorry. So just like animation and just like pages for comics, I haven't got the time to sit and wait. I'm not that guy. So
well, and also getting into rendering. I mean, like I studied out in San Francisco, so I ran into a couple of people at Pixar, and one of them worked in rendering. It was like talking to an engineer.
Yeah, 100%.
It was like, oh my goodness. Like I was like, I don't know, that's mostly math, man. Like I don't think that I walked away thinking that's probably not for me.
Yeah, it's scary. It's they reduce magic hour down to algorithms, and it's like, well, that's not me. Right. I don't do that. That's just a rose tinted sky. That's not an algorithm. That's that's a feeling, not a number. I don't.
Yeah.
And I still don't. Do that now. I don't do that now. People say I've got like my son said to me the other day, he said, how can you see color like that? How did you learn to see that that's graded a bit too much yellow? He said, I can't even see yellow. And I'm like, I didn't learn it. I just see it. It's like, that's what everyone who does enough of it and looks at it enough, all your concept artists who make it can all see, and they all know what color theory is before they start. And they all learn to, what you start to see once you've got rid of all the bad. It's the old adage, do enough drawings and you'll know what's left is the good stuff. And that, look at Goro Fujita, look at Geo Nakpil, look at all of these like titans of the industry. None of them got it for free. They all grafted through that. They did 1 million, 10,000 hours is like training ground. They grafted through their careers, and some of them look a lot younger than me, but they've weared better than me. But you just bite through it, and and eventually what comes out is you bang enough heads on the table, and you see what's left. And that's what we don't get enough of at the minute. People want stuff too quickly and for free without putting that effort in. You'll know as a painter, you can't have that for free. You cannot have what you've got as a painter for free. Nobody can. There's no talented person that can do what you do without doing what you've done. And that's a big lesson for people because they don't like it. I'd love to do what you do. Well, you don't, because if you did, you'd do what I did. You'd be grafting right now.
Right.
And the one that
I would love it for free. It would be great. It would have saved me a lot of headache. But
absolutely. But then everyone yeah. Right. And then we got to AI. No.
Right. No, I mean, but that's the thing. Like you were saying, like, before, just like all of the things that you had to go through to hone your skill. but you were also at the same time kind of honing your technical skill in parallel. And I think that's one of the things that really fascinates me, and why, I love your work, and also just like I love your thinking too. Is just you're trying to shorten that gap between artistic and technical, leaning more towards the artistic side. You're coming at it from an artist point of view,
Yeah, it's a
and
good way.
like that was tough. I mean, when you were starting, because there was such a technical hurdle, um, just with the software, but even like the hardware, like you were saying, like you had alluded to silicon graphics machines, but they were like, people don't understand, like you had to spend thousands of dollars
Yeah.
uh to just get a machine that could get you some sort of a product, like to work with these programs. They were so um you know just so demanding, that you needed custom built hardware to just to even
Yeah,
run it. And now
I
you can run it
still,
off of an iPad, which
I
is
still, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
There's something that I'm trying to, so the, if you think, I'm going to use a really strange analogy here, but it's a really important point. If you think of like how many superstars there are whose children become as good as they are, it's very, very few, because they don't have the struggle, do they? There's a good analogy. So what in this industry, if you look at what people were doing, back in the early Pixar days, and the first Jurassic Park, and what Cameron was doing back then, the struggle leads to the product being as amazing. Look at, even go back to Harryhausen and what have you. It's the fact that he blasted through it and did it, that's what made it amazing. We've got so much access to so much stuff now that the gross aggregate is less, and there's less. I mean, I watched Creator last night, and that's the first film that's made me go, wow, this year. That's the first film that's made me go, he shot that on a Sony F, whatever it is. And I'm like, he's what I'm talking about. He's someone who can make magic out of whatever he's got in his hands. And I think with computers, it's happened again recently to me with 3D printing, where we've had to push through with color 3D printing with one machine in the country. That's what led to what led for me to Pinocchio and being able to do that. But if you give somebody 25 machines and 50 artists, yeah, and 150 million quid's worth of budget, yeah, they'll do it for you, but they won't get through like other people do it with a guerrilla unit. And I think there's something about that with the good stuff is done through adversity. I think you've got to go through that. You've got to push through you've got to learn the stuff as you're needing it, rather than just be sitting down and being an artist in a chicken factory. That's where we lose the soul of our product. That's where we've got too many films where you don't want to watch them because they're drained of life, and you feel it from, it's just, well, make me another one of them because that'll make me as much money as that did. And that's where we are going in a very sad way. That way is, most, look at ArtStation. There is no bad artwork on ArtStation. There's nothing bad. Everything is epic. And what it leads to is a degradation of the overall, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, you're I mean, did you I mean, you were seeing different applications of this type of stuff, though, as the years kept going on, like how people wouldn't use it to, like, it was like a novelty thing, like, oh, this is kind of nice, going to like now people are using it on multi-million-dollar productions, or using it to make, the fact that you can run Blender, or you have graphics cards like the 4090 that you can, so that one person can do, what an entire team had to do like 10 years before, is pretty remarkable and kind of empowering on in in that respect. There's not as much of like a technical hurdle. I guess that was my point, is that like you don't need, it's like what Ralph Bakshi, he did what Disney did with like a quarter of the budget, but because at that time technology had kind of advanced enough that you pulled something like that off.
Yeah.
And now we can do that even further, where like you're creating an entire 3D printable things, from your iPad, which is it's quite remarkable.
I mean, it is incredible. I mean, you've just made me think of what I was saying early on. One of the things I said at the start of this was I'm an early adopter to some degree. So I realized with Pixologic and ZBrush that I'd got something incredible, but I only realized it very, very late. So I didn't know it was great until I was way down the line into it. So what I've always strived to do is find the technology before it's popular. Excuse me. And that's led me to lots of different new career paths or strands, should I say, not paths, because they're all the same thing, really. It's all about creativity and helping people create in new and innovative ways, which is my own tagline now. So a couple of examples of that as you roll forward is for example, well, 3D printing was one. So I saw that come in 20 years ago. I've got 3D prints in the office from when they were just powder, but back
Wow.
in the day. And you even go think of like Jurassic Park 2. They printed they printed a Raptor's voice box. So they showed a rapid prototyper in the film, and then they blew into it and it gave the sound of the Raptor. Well, that got me thinking. I'm like, is that a thing? Is that made up? And then I start researching it and go, no, actually, those printers exist in universities. So I went and found somebody with one, and then I printed a load of my stuff back then before it was, nobody would know what I was talking about back then. And then I thought, right, I'm going to invest a few grand in the first machines that are actually desks. So I wait then. And then the first ones that were any kind of machinery were the MakerBot machines. So this is probably about 12 years ago, something like that. And I'll drop a couple of quid on one of them, and it might yield me no money, but what it will do is it will teach me enough of the basics to know if I need that. And I'll, and look at where that's gone now. Look at where printing's gone. And then it
Yeah.
happened again with VR. So 2014, I saw the new resurgence of VR creation tools, and I thought, right, I'll put some hours in that. And that led me to the relationship with with Oculus, and going over to San Francisco and meeting the Facebook team and working with them, and then that led me to Gravity Sketch. And so it's all the same stuff, it's just different. I suppose the right word would be it's the same message with different mediums. And I
Right.
don't really care about the mediums. I'll go and I'll go and investigate it and see if it's any good. But I don't adopt it when I don't fully go chips in if it then dies a death. So I'll go in, I'll have a look, and I'll either say, you're right, I'll do a bit of that, or I'll pull away. And I'm having the first problem I've encountered in all my career is AI, because this is a disruptor in a very, very different way. This is the first one where I can't tell you how I even feel about it. And that for so many reasons that we probably won't be able to get into here. But this is the first time I've hit a brick wall. I'm like, do I want to push through this brick wall, or do I want to just bounce off it and go back? I don't know with that one yet. I'll probably come back and do it in a year's time and probably tell you how I feel,
Right.
with that one. But if we bring it back on track, that's where Nomad came from. So 10 years ago, I spotted a trend for there's a guy called Adam Dewhurst using Forger. And it was written by a guy that was working in Passion Pictures down in London, who I ended up working for loads. And he did some sculpting on that. I was like, I like that. iPad wasn't particularly brilliant at it. But that evolved into a nice program. And then Stefan came along, who's an ex Sketchfab developer, who then developed Nomad. So when I saw that coming, I said to my business partner, forget that there's no search engine optimization. Forget that there's no such word as Nomad Sculpt. She's like, you can't do this. There's no, there's nothing online. You can't have something that's not so. I'm like, we'll make that. We'll help him make that. He doesn't have a Twitter yet. We'll help him. And there you go. That
Wow.
led to now my biggest, ridiculously, it's the thing that's made me the most money. It's stupid. It's an iPad sculpting app that's taken over my life in a lot of ways.
So as you were working in studios teaching ZBrush, you're experimenting along the way, and then Nomad comes 10 years ago, so that's 2013.
No, that was Forger, and then Nomad.
Oh, Forger, sorry. Yeah, right. Because was it Nomad's like what, 5 years old or 4 years old? It's only 3.
Just over 3 years old. Yeah.
Wow. So you started this is when I guess came across your work. Was I was looking into Forger because I had gotten an iPad Pro and I was illustrating on it, and always wanted to get into 3D. But all of my previous attempts were just like I didn't have enough time to dedicate to it. Like I remember the early versions of like Maya, messing around when they had like a free educational tier. I don't know if they even still do that anymore, because I remember seeing it in Lord of the Rings, and I downloaded uh my Power Mac book, and messed around with it a little bit, the camera, and then I was like, all right, this is over my head. Then I tried Cinema 4D like early on, but something about Forger and people being able to kind of produce something really quickly was really fascinating to me. And I didn't know that the buy-in wasn't that big. Like I didn't have to commit that much. But then so that's when I came across your video. So that was around 2020. So I guess take me through that. So at that point, were you had a studio in house that was teaching ZBrush classes and things like that?
Yeah. So we were
before that point.
we were full. So I suppose the bit that I've missed out is that when I started my company, or that time, in the 2000 and whatever it was, 2007 or 8, whenever it was, the actual company that Southern GFX started, I dropped really lucky again. My first contract was with a company in the UK called Sky. And a buddy of mine was a freelancer working for Sky, and I did his modeling, and then he went in house and he got him promoted, and then he got promoted again, and then he became the head of visual effects in Sky and handled all the sport. So I just took all the modeling and just kept taking it, and it was all in Cinema 4D. But we are still now a supplier for Sky in every country, so Italy, UK, all of the countries wherever they need a specific asset, we generally provide it, all the 3D. In the old days, we'd call it broadcast titles. So it's basically assets for TV. So that is a great little constant job for my team, which means I can do all this other stuff. So my company is several things, but that allows me to be who I am. But that means I had to become an expert in Cinema 4D so believe it or not, Cinema 4D is my main tool, which then makes it strange that Forger goes and gets bought by Maxon, ZBrush goes and gets bought by Maxon, brings it all into one little package, really. So yeah, the COVID has hit, and our income stream of me going out and meeting people has gone. The income stream of me bringing people here, flying them in from New York and Hong Kong, bringing them here in teams to the studio, that money's gone. Me going out to other studios, that money's gone. So I'm like, right, we're like, we could be in trouble here. We had to let a few people go because we were up to a team of 6 or 7 at that point. So we had to shed people, put some people on what do you call it? I can't even remember what they call it now.
Like furlough?
Furlough, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't remember the word. Yeah, so we got some help. And luckily, what I had done is I'd kind of done 2 of those little kind of like research into what the future is going to be. So one was I was heavily into VR, so I was working with Gravity Sketch, and we were lucky enough to be able to get a government grant to work with them. So that was paying the wages for about 3 people and me. And then also I'd seen this opportunity with Nomad Sculpt or Forger. First of all, we started all of our videos in Forger, and then suddenly I just thought, right, this piece of software, I got it well before it was released. Stefan contacted me, the developer, and he said, you can see there on screen, actually, you can see it was all Forger, and that's exactly 3 years ago. So Forger, right. Forger. If you scroll down, keep going, and you'll suddenly see I was doing Gravity Sketch, which is VR, and that's when I started my masters. So I'll talk to you about that as a separate point, because I valued the fact of going into education. And then suddenly, if you go up a bit, it suddenly changes to keep going. Nomad Sculpt. There you go. So that's 2 years ago. So realistically, it's 2.5 years, nearly 3 years. So
Wow.
at that point, I just took a gamble and I just made a course. I just thought, right, let's have a look at. I used to be good friends with Ryan Kingsley, who used to be one of the big ZBrush
Mhm.
people, and
Oh yeah.
he stepped out of the world a little bit and went into online course selling and promoting with his own companies as well. And he started with a company called Kajabi. So I did my business partner Emma. She did the research and like, yeah, Kajabi and Teachable are the two main ones. So we bought fully into Kajabi and just got ourselves a package so we can put all our courses in that, and then we haven't stopped. That's what led to this really. So 94 countries now.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of sales. We sell one every day, every single day. We've never had a day where we don't have a sale, which is, ZBrush could go weeks without a sale, because it's such a big package and a big investment for people, where people can pick this up, presuming you've got an iPad. You're talking
Right.
15 quid one-off payment, and that's it. You're in. And I'm all about pilot high, sell it cheap. So I always said to Emma, the courses are going to be like 15 quid, 20 quid, maximum 50 quid, and then bundles when you get like 10 courses. And
Right.
that's what we've stuck to really. And that model has served us quite well, because we went into an economic downturn, and obviously it got tighter for people. And we went, if we'd have gone in with that, it's 300 quid for a course, or you can join it. And that model that I used to do, a lot of us used to do it. I used to sell courses for 1,500 quid at one point. It's a very different world now. Education is so readily available, quite rightly, and I'm on board with that. So
Yeah. I think that's one of the great things about, I think, how your courses is that, first, I think, and this is, I mean, I think you're just a phenomenal teacher, number one.
very kind of
Uh, yeah, no, I mean that, because I taught at a university for 13 years, and I was really fortunate to have really good mentors who were phenomenal teachers. But uh, I remember thinking when I got the beginning course, um, I don't know, like I remember opening up the software and thinking, okay, there's all these buttons. And then like I hit a button, I'm like, why do I see a wireframe? What's going on? And then like after the first chapter of your course, um, I was able to make something. That was like the most empowering thing in the world.
yeah,
And
that's important. Yeah.
yeah, and you were, how you teach us your courses. So I got the T-Rex course and a bunch of other stuff. And um, is you could tell that you've been teaching for a long time, because you break it down really simply, and then you build like a base of foundation of knowledge, and then you just add on to it slowly but surely. But then by the end of it, you're just, I'm just like Nomad's, like, Photoshop or Procreate to me. It's like second
It just
nature.
becomes second nature. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely appreciate about that. Yeah, I wanted to show your courses, because the cool thing about your courses, or I think more than cool, I think it's phenomenal, is that you update them all the time. So I'm still getting, it's like a new course for me every time. So I haven't gone through this version, because I think this just got updated fairly recently. But
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's the beginner's course that we update as it only gets a full update when he completely changes the interface, but we update the chapters. So this week we're putting a full 15 section course in there for doing vinyl toys. So that's just going in there. So you get that. If you've already bought the course, you're already in it. And what you may have seen is that we do lives every month for people who have the courses. So at that point, they just come in, and there might only be 60 people or something like that. But we just talk about what what we've learned, and what questions have come in. And I'm a big believer in that, which is the value. People will keep, if I could turn a course out every week, people would buy it, because they tell me that, if you've done one, have you done, and I just don't have the capacity to keep turning this stuff out at the speed that could be my entire business, but it would shut down so many other things that I want to do. And also I'm a lecturer now. After I got my master's, I went and I thought I've got to keep that going. So one day a week I lecture at a local university on the immersive course. So I have to balance it all and run the YouTube channel. So I feel like, and I'm not making any excuses here, but it's my time is incredibly, I'm really trying my best to keep everything going at the same speed, and it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is an audio podcast as well as a visual one, but like if you go through Glenn's Instagram page, you could just see like all of the things that you're doing at once. You would think that that's all you did because of all of the like, I mean, you're Procreate one day, you're then Nomad, then you're
Seeing it, I
digital.
haven't really looked at it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like then you're just like, oh, what is Glenn doing now? It's like, why is he, what's this 3D printing? Okay, so he's all right, all right. So I was like, okay, he bought a 3D print, and then like the next day, and then like weeks later, it's like, here are all the prints I did, and then you're airbrushing things, and you take a look at your studio, and you're like, oh my goodness, like this is like, what's Glenn up to this time?
Oh, that's
So
cool. It's quite funny. It's quite funny because you never stop to actually talk to people about this stuff. I just, there's Wallace and Gromit. I went down, I taught at Ardman. That was a lifelong goal. Tick that off last year.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. That's like I don't know what I would. You'd have to pinch me because I'd be like, oh my god,
yeah. You had to pinch me. It was. Wow. I've got this bucket list of people that I want to work with, and I'm nearly there. I've worked with nearly all of the people I said I was going to, which is insane. I feel so. One of my best group of friends here in the north of England is McKinnon and Saunders, who I worked on Pinocchio for Guillermo with. And McKinnon and Saunders are the premier puppet makers in the world. Frank. The Henson Company come and ask McKinnon and Saunders for stuff. The top people at Leica came from McKinnon and Saunders. Georgina Hayes, who was head of puppetry at Leica, was 15 years in McKinnon and Saunders. So they are that level. And I have my own cut with G on it. I've got. They're a family. They literally are. I walk into a room there and I'm the least talented. I love that feeling. That's such a liberating feeling. You walk in one day and you'll see stuff from Tim Burton that's been, fixed, and you're like, oh my god, they did Corpse Bride, they did Fantastic Mr. Fox, they did, and I have the privilege of saying that I'm a tiny little friend of theirs, on the side, and that's the stuff that gets me up in the morning. I wake up looking for those opportunities and those friendships, and then I work my butt off to make sure I deliver for them.
So tell me about like the Pinocchio job, because so you had just walk us through like that whole
so
whole process.
Pinocchio is obviously, it's the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio. So it was by artwork by Grizz Grimley. So it was about 10 years in the making, 10 years of them trying to get the job off the ground, and I think with Guillermo doing Shape of Water and doing so well with his Oscars with that, I think they finally said, right, game on, you can go for it. So McKinnon and Saunders were the lead. He wanted McKinnon and Saunders to be the lead puppet makers on the show. He wanted all the hero assets done in McKinnon and Saunders, with everything else being done in two places. So the production house was Shadow Machine in Portland, who were made up a lot of ex-Leica people mostly. And then the other part is he wanted to put a lot of money back into Mexico with Guadalajara, and he wanted to get a lot of people there. So he really looked after his home community. So I was hired basically I've worked for years on the potential of getting it. So we've worked on commercials with the idea of using that as a tech test. We've commercials for Sainsbury's doing full 3D color printing that really helped us understand how we would get to the point where we could make Pinocchio. And then I was hired as technical sculptor to work on Pinocchio himself, to make Pinocchio work. So there was a plasticine sculptor, Takashi, who's like the best sculptor in the world. He did the actual, from Guillermo's design. He then basically realized it in plasticine, we then had to get that via, through a scan, and then we had to get that into somehow make that into a puppet. So I worked with a guy called Richard Pickersgill, who's the workshop supervisor, who's a technical wizard in metal and puppetry. So he understands the physical world side of it. And my job was to make that path come together. So I then made the head work in to his requirements. And that was it. That was a massive job, just getting Pinocchio's head and body, because we won an award. So we went to the VES Awards this year. I was nominated with Richard. So we got a nomination for the metal 3D printing, which was mostly Richard, if I'm honest. And I didn't get that. We went to LA. We had a week in LA on Netflix, which was lovely. We did the awards. But then later in the year, we got what are called TCT Awards, which is the 3D printing awards, and we smashed that. We won that outright. So there you go. There's the awards. That's when we were. That's the bigger award for me. LA was nice, but Birmingham's lovely. So winning that is that is the epitome of the. I've never wanted an award as much as that, because that basically says I can do it in the 3D print world. So that's very special to me. That was a really special moment there. So I worked on that, developed the tech to make his head work and his internal works, with Richard leading that. But amazing. It was, probably one of my best experiences. I mean, I've got some of the test prints we did here on. I could show these. I think because they're all.
Oh my God!
These are all broken bits that we did for the tests. So these are all lying. They're just broken bits that obviously you're not really allowed to have any assets, so we don't keep any of the puppets or anything like that. They're worth thousands. But obviously I spent so much time with that puppet. I was printing him every day to make the test fitments and other 3D print companies, and an amazing artist. See that one on the screen there, the poster, that one there, that's up in the office behind me up here. We all got a print of that from Guillermo, which is amazing, really.
Wow.
Stunning job. That is the best production, best team, best show I've ever worked on. That for me, I will never reach that again, I don't think, because of how we had to strive. There was to get to that point was a lot of sweat and blood and tears and crying, and to make it work outside of a Leica environment where there's a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money. We had what we had, and that's what we did. So I'm super, super proud of that. And I'm so, I like to think I'm a humble person. I'm getting less probably as I get older, but I am just like one little cog in that. I did a very, people give me more credit for that. They credit me for the sculpt, and I always make it clear I did not sculpt that. I technically sculpted the technical bit, which is big. But the guy that actually did the plasticine sculpt is one of my heroes. He's probably my favorite sculptor in the world. And no one knows his name. He's behind a firewall of anonymity. It's amazing. Which a lot of those guys are. Peter McKinnon and Saunders, Peter, the older of the two, he worked on Dark Crystal. So,
I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I knew McKinnon and Saunders from Bob the Builder, and then Fantastic Mr. Fox, because I spent some time over in Manchester, studying abroad. And so I was all into kind of the UK animation houses,
the Aardman and the
the Aardman and exactly right. But I had no idea that one of them had got started in Dark Crystal. It's pretty amazing.
I think he worked on I think he told me he worked on the Wheelies, the big creatures that wheel around. I might be giving him a disservice there, but and they got their start as the two of them got together and they set up a company to make Mars Attacks for Burton. So and this is an interesting story because they had all the puppets made and they were doing all that, and then bloody CG got in the way, and the producers were like, well, we can do this in CG now because of what's happened with Jurassic Park and all of this, and
Oh
so
wow.
the story goes, Burton looked after them and they used all of their stuff for assets on, live sets, and they made big. And there's a full size alien in their lobby. That alien there. There's a 6 foot version of that as you walk in. So he stood by them, and that set them up with their company and their first studio, and that was it. That here we are, the history of them. Um, it's incredible
Wow.
when you said at the start you like the history. That really rings my bell. I love going into how we got, how are we what we are, and these people that's they all love Burton. You should go and look at who Burton loves and look at who
Right.
made him what he is, and look at Henry Selick for Nightmare, and go and follow those animators and go and see what those I was a big fan of Leica and Kubo and the Two Strings, and one of my favorite films of all time is Paranorman.
Oh
And what
yeah.
that they're the kind of films that have influenced me in later years. I'll never get to work on them because they don't exist anymore. Leica don't make shows like that at the moment, or then they've kind of gone off the boil in my estimation. I want that to come back. I want that world of, Wendell and Wild was good, and a different company, different people, and I met the team that were on that. I don't know if you saw that film.
No,
Yeah,
I
have
didn't see
have a
that
look
one.
at
No.
that one. That's quite a crafty one, a really good story behind it. And one
Yeah.
of the sorry, go on.
No, one thing I was gonna say was the to think that Tim Burton was a Disney animator. I mean, was a classmate of John Lasseter and Brad Bird, and
Yeah,
they all worked on, I think, The Fox and the Hound together.
that's right. Yeah,
And to think to think that from that's somebody who had like a unique vision, and but you could see where his you know his influences were when you go back and do that, actually research it. I mean, that's one of the things that I really loved doing, is seeing who influenced what and how that came about, because um I was like, what we were talking about earlier before with like some of the old school stop motion people, like it wasn't like I looked at Phil Tippett because he was like, I love what he did in RoboCop, Starship
yeah,
Troopers, later on, when they made the actual like kind of like the rigged up like kind of armature that translated into 3D, and I thought that was so cool. But then I found out about Ray Harryhausen, who I've seen Jason and the Argonauts forever, but I
yeah,
just never put two and two together that one person did that.
yeah.
And but to see kind of that kind of artistic lineage is,
Yeah, it's
I think,
amazing.
integral into kind of
We
learning.
you can trace it all back. You can go back to Future World, which is the second film after Westworld in the '70s, and look at the wireframe hand. That's a wireframe hand that's coded by hand by Catmull. He literally did it on paper. He wrote down the coordinates of a wireframe that he'd drawn on a hand, and that was then animated. That is why we're talking.
Right.
Whatever you think of those people now, and he's a big corporate director and taking the buyouts, all of that goes away from me because they got us where we are. You need to go back and dig into how we became, certainly if you're using anything digital, it came through a very, very traceable path. A lot harder for just core analog and fine art, but and a lot further back, obviously. But our history is still alive. Mostly, we can talk to the people that we're standing on the shoulders of, which is
Right.
incredible. I find that quite liberating, really.
Yeah. I mean, and to think that today now, like, the it's so interesting that art and commerce have always had like this. It's like a relationship, when it comes to things like entertainment art and um, special effects or illustration, or whatever, some commercial application of it. There's always even I would argue even in the gallery world, where I have an existence in. It's kind of like it's a marriage between like time equals money, and you only have so much time. So what do you do with that time?
Yeah,
And I think that seeing every so often you see like a like this sort of like really handcrafted or like Pinocchio, which was like you would think that it was like a massive team that did that, and I was shocked to find out how small the team was.
Yeah, and the budget.
That
Budget
puts
was
it,
pennies. Budget was crazy.
yeah, to think that was even possible. I mean, I don't know if could be pulled off at least 10 years ago, or but with that kind of constraint, I mean, who knows? It would have been a different film, obviously, but
I mean, there's a generational thing, isn't it? I mean, you can find the outliers in every generation. So Coraline was the one of the time, and Nightmare Before Christmas was the one before that for that kind of world. I think you can find them, but it's getting harder to find. I think Creator, the one I saw last night, I think that is of its time. I think that's a very, very special film for the money. It's an 80 million budget, which now is like, it's pocket change. And I might be wrong on that number, but it's not going to be much more. And like, how the hell do you, and you look at his lineage, he started as a VFX artist, and he made monsters, and he did it on a budget, and he shot it and VFXed it in a very small team. So the small teams can have the big impacts, can't they? So it's right. Sometimes the bigger a unit gets, and it just doesn't work. I learned a lot of that in post production in studios. You hire too many people too early, and it doesn't actually help. It's the exact opposite. You need to keep your teams as small as you possibly can until you know exactly what the next person's going to do. And that's more VFX production and VFX coordination, and you have to be good at man management team. That's what I was saying at the start. Being able to create the art is only one tiny bit of it.
Yeah, it seems like also nowadays, I mean, more the way technology is kind of evolved in that respect is also kind of is extremely empowering in terms of kind of the auteur of things, right? It's like you're able to have much more of a yourself in a given product or a vision sort of carried all the way through, where it's like before it was a little bit more tricky. You had to jump through a bunch of hoops to do something like that. So I mean,
yeah,
the way I see it, it's almost like you're the fact that like Creator was done for so little. It's almost like you're getting one of those like it could be the start of the next trend of kind of directors like Robert Rodriguez, who were doing everything on like a shoestring budget, doing everything themselves, and then we look back like John Carpenter, being able to kind of control their vision and kind of satisfy the needs of like the commercial aspects of it that allows them to be created. I mean, where do you see all of that? I mean, stuff going? I know AI is like a huge like wrench in the sense that it's just such a huge unknown, because it's not necessarily like you don't go from, maybe you do go from like Photoshop to then 3D to I guess AI is such a different at least for me it's like it's like text by art by prompt, generating like whereas like everything at least in our world was so physical and interactive in the tactile sense.
I try not to converse too much on AI, because I started with it about 5 years ago, did commercial jobs with AI for AMD. I was, like I always say to you, or like I've said to you in the interview, I try and do stuff before everyone gets onto it. And that's why I don't have any NFTs, because I jumped on that way before that started. And then I was like, I'm having none of this. But with AI, and it's not.
I guess my question is like, I guess not necessarily. I don't know if I want to open up the can of worms of AI, and more so like, where do you see kind of like you're such a workflow type of person, being like we were talking about before, being able to kind of be an early adopter on things. I mean, where do you see an artist's workflow going?
So if you,
in the near future,
I've got some definite opinions on certain, but you have to factor in that we need to get past the legality of scraping data. I think once that's resolved, we can talk about it. Once we're not stealing artwork, that's when we have the conversation, and that's already being solved. So that'll be solved legally, and it'll be solved ethically because people won't like it, which they don't. But it's already getting solved. So if you look at a piece of software called Viscom that Scott Robertson is using a lot, and Steve Tukowski and quite a few others, and I jumped on it after Scott told me about it. That is using a database that comes from Shutterstock. So it's not scrape data; it's data that's been bought by people who have sold their artwork to it. So that's it straight away. Yeah. So the big difference with this one is you have to put your image in first. You have to put your sketch in. And that's what I want. I want to be able to say, put me the sketch in and you render it for me. That's what I do every day anyway. So I don't mind that. And I don't mind using other people's art if they're getting paid to allow me to show you my creative vision. So that I'm excited about. And that's here. That's getting there. But then I was never a kit basher, and I was never a photo basher. So, how much I'm going to use it, I don't know, because, I like the idea of it, but it will become a very style. There will people that'll be saying, oh, remember back in, 2023 when we were all doing this style. That's already happening. Right. People are saying, look at what was on Instagram last year in terms of the stable diffusion stuff. You don't want to be part of that now because that's so old. So I'm not getting worried about it. It's not holding me back. It's not, I'm not. What is very scary, and I'm going to be very brutally honest here, is that I get a lot of stuff from a lot of big studios where they say, right, Glenn, we need you to work on this project. The stuff that comes to me is AI because they've used it without people knowing it. And I get that because it is very, if you want to show me how, you need me, I'm going to use something that I'm not doing. So let's say you want to show me a giant black bird that's got a robotic head. Well, you can describe it to me, or you can show me a picture you found and made with AI. I get that. And then as long as I'm getting paid to make the final, I don't mind it. But the danger is when that, they can just make the bird with the robotic head without me. That's the bit that's going to hurt people. Now, for me, it's not a problem because I'm at the at the twilight end of my career, and I've got enough fires in the iron to be able to jump around. But if I'm teaching BAs and master students now to come into the industry, I can't tell them to ignore AI. I'm trying to learn that at the minute. I'm trying to learn how to teach these people and how to help them get into it, because the creativity now has got so many branches, whether it be projection, whether it be 360, whether it be VR, AR, MR, XR, immersive this, and that's changing and that. At the end of the day, I like to say, well, let's just get back to the basics. Are you doing you can talk to me about that stuff when you can talk to me about perspective, light, shadow, form, silhouette. If you can't do that, we don't really want to be having that conversation because you're not going to be at the level you need to be to get through. So that's the way I'm dealing with it at the moment. I take people back to my moleskins and I say, look, draw, show me what you can draw. Show me what you can, show me what you can do with Procreate. It's a bit.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to see, like, one of the things about AI, like I've had discussions with colleagues about it, and we're looking back on it and seeing like, man, it has such a look to it. Yeah. In the same way kind of like early Photoshop would have, when we'd be like, well, look at this. I could generate like a lens flare anywhere I want, like, look at this cool Gaussian blur that I can do, like we were all doing like really bad psychedelic
clouds. Look at these clouds.
Clouds, right. So to, kind of at the end of the day, like, and even like with Blender, I mean, I don't show it on a lot of my Instagram, but I'm like heavily involved with like VR sculpting, thanks to like your videos. Like I've got a Quest 2 and I'm messing around with Shape Lab and Gravity Sketch and, Blender and all this stuff. As much as impressive as the things you can do with it with very little effort, considering like how long it used to take, the core skills start to, like, who has the core skills of composition and drawing and just the developed eye really start to stick out like a sore thumb, because you could see like a really impressive noisy image of just like these like photorealistic models or high quality photographs that you've gotten from photobash.org or something like but like if the image isn't readable, or the composition isn't sound, then it's kind of wasted. I find it, I look at that stuff kind of like I remember I was talking to an illustrator. His name is John Matos, and he was like he's done tons of stuff for like Time Magazine and advertising campaigns. But one of his I when I talked to him, I found out that he had done the airbrushed typography for Indiana Jones, like that gradient.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, you did Indiana Jones. And he says, out of all the things I've done, this is the thing we're talking about. But to think about how much skill that took to pull something like that off. Because I mean, I have an airbrush. I'm awful with it. It just gets what I needed to get done. But like the fact that like now that's like a button click Photoshop and like gradients, smooth gradients or whatever, is just goes to show you that it's like what you're using it and how you're using it, and what the hand behind it is, how important that is, and the taste and the development of the eye is in the artist. I think is becoming even more and more of I guess a valued thing, because like you were saying, you don't get to like it's like with the Viscom, it's like the old programming adage, garbage in, garbage out. It's like it's not going to be any better than what you're putting, what you're putting in, what you're getting out of it is what you put into it.
Yeah.
And so it's just going back to what you were saying in terms of like your Moleskine and who the artist is and what they're into. So you said that you were on the twilight of your career. Glenn, you look really young. So like, I'm so a lot of young.
Wow. I'm really not.
Yeah. I was where do you see yourself going, I guess, in the near future?
So
you're into so many things, and it's so I really admire you for that. That you're constantly doing stuff and different things, and you're always keeping your curiosity up. And I think that's at least for me and all the artists that I've talked to, it's kind of like the secret recipe to a healthy career.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Where you don't get jaded and stuff is by constantly doing
that is difficult. And I don't when I go down dark roads with being jaded, I stop it, and I stop people. I stop when I'm in a group of people. I stop that because it's very, even if it's right, it's wrong. It leads to a dark place, and I'm all about positive. We need to be positive for people that are coming behind us. So I don't do negativity even when it's warranted. But to your question, so I'm when I say cruising to the end of my time, obviously financially I'm at a point where I can draw a pension, and all my pensions are going to be up within the next 36 months. I can do that. So that means that takes away a stress for me with finances to some degree. But that isn't what I'm about. I can't just stop. While I've got my health and my sanity, it will never go away. It's just that I won't do as much client work. That's the big thing. So my goal is, and you can tell it, I wear it on my sleeve, is, I got the masters to allow me to move in an academic circle, which allows me to get a higher rate of pay and more influence for consultation. So I'm moving towards less client. I wanted to really push to get some Pinocchio level movie. I've got some lovely TV shows. I work for Netflix a lot. Worked on Shadow and Bone, and quite a few shows that make. I just wanted a few more nice IPs on my CV, so that I can then really go and move into the much more into my own company's teaching, and also teaching people out there in universities. So that's what I'm going to do more of. And I'm going to just move to. I probably will end my career as a lecturer. I'll probably will do immersive, or maybe I won't ever do game or anything like that at uni. It'll be something creative with mixed media, which is pretty much sums me up really. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that part. I'm doing that one day a week to say I do it. It's on my CV, so I can choose where I want to go and do it. I'm not going to leave the UK. I love the UK. I love the north of England. I love my, where I am. But I will do a lot. I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of diving. I do a lot of exploring, and I'm going to do a lot more of that. but I'm going to keep banging out the art. You know, I'm not going to stop. You know, I've got you know, I brought some props that, you know, it's no good for your podcast audio only, but
Yeah,
you know,
but it's great for me. It's great for me.
like these are like my
Look
mold.
at that.
These is like one pod of. I mean, I don't know. I normally do about one every 6 months forever since they made Moleskin. Um,
Wow.
so I don't stop, and I don't do that for money, and I don't do it for, you know, I do it because that's what I do. You know, and that goes alongside the iPad, that goes alongside everything. So that's not going away. You know, that's how I just thought I'd have a quick look. You know, there's all kinds of rubbish in there, but that you know, that will be how I end my days, is sketching in a field with plants and animals. You know, I love rare things, really. So I collect rare plants. I collect Japanese plants. I want to get out to the Himalayas. I've got all these crazy things that I do outside the art, but they're all the same thing in a way. They all lead to the same kind of route. So you'll not see me changing that much. And I don't take sponsorships. I've just noticed there the Anatomy for Sculptors. So I did a series of adverts for them, and they use it all over their social media. I don't get paid for that stuff. I don't want paying for it. I'm not that person. I do it because I can, and they give me as many of those books as I want. So all my students get them. You know, I do it
It's a
to share.
great book. It's a
Yeah,
great
they're
book.
amazing.
I
They're amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. And I look for people like that. I look for companies like that. You know, that's why I work with Wacom and Sense Labs and, you know, Logitech, Lenovo. They all work with me. They pay me when it's a job, but I do it for the love of it, and for you know, I'll go anywhere for those kind of people to, you know, to help them spread the message of what we are and what we do. Excuse me. So yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna keep going on with. Here's a Guanji.
Oh, there. Wow. Oh, that looks great.
So
Oh, wow.
these are your audience should love this, because these are made on an iPad. You know, this is what we're talking about, really. So that's a Harry. It's a good way to, you know, you were talking about Harryhausen, and that's a Harryhausen film from the mid
Oh,
'60s.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
that's
Oh, man.
my take on a Guanji, which is very different than, you know, this kind of stuff, which is very photorealistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at that.
So, you know,
Oh, wow. That's so cool to see him oh, that's great. I didn't know that it was like you had like almost like an orthographic view on the other side. That's awesome.
full, you know, skull on one side, full, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I get up for. That's what I like. I'm working on loads of really, I can't really tell you about a lot of them, but there's a dinosaur project I'm working on that I'm looking forward to share. I've been working on that for a year, so
Awesome.
I'll be able to share that soon. Quite a few. I can't tell you about the film I'm working on, because it's like insane. But you know, we're all like that. We can't talk about stuff till about 3 years after we find it, which is, it's always the same, isn't it? So
Right.
yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I guess that's a perfect place to end it. So we have, so all of these links will be in the show notes, but we've got your courses, of course, on Nomad Sculpt, your YouTube page, which you know, if you want to see how the be free content. I mean, this is tons of stuff. I mean, when Glenn says like I kind of do like a YouTube thing, I could go through this. I mean, like this is like a committed page, you know. So he does the output of somebody who's doing this full time, you know. This is one of the thousands of things.
You should see my plant channel.
You have a plant channel. Oh,
I'm not even going to tell you what it is. I'm not. People, if they like rare plants, they can look it up. I have all kinds of channels. It's quite mad. I'm not even going to get anybody into that stuff. So yeah.
That's great. So and have your ArtStation as well. Is there any other things you wanted to plug or
Oh, not really. That's a good
chat about?
spot. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't update. So I've got slower and slower. I don't update. I haven't updated any of. I mean, Instagram gets updated daily. Threads and Twitter occasionally, and then everything else is, you know, our company website really kind of died with COVID. We don't spend a lot of time updating it because we don't make any money off it. People don't come to us via SEO and normal routes anymore. You know, we don't bother with it. So some of it is dated. So I really every now and again should sort of like, I don't even have a show. I was approached twice last week for 2 different jobs, and they both said, we want your show reel. I went, no, I don't want the job, thanks. It's
Yeah.
and one of them was Meta. So I'm like, look, well, you've already worked with me. I've worked with you. I've worked in your lobby. And I'm like, nah, I can't be bothered. It's, you know, we've got tons of work. We're very, very lucky. You know, if I have to go making show reels and stuff like that, it's like going back to the start of my career. It's, you know,
Right.
I would do it for the right job, and I have done it for the right job this week. If I'm honest, the job that I wanted was a film that you know, I kind of been waiting to get on. So if it all comes off, I'll share it with you, and then you can update the show notes to this of what that film is, because it'll mean quite a lot, really, if it comes off to the level I want. So
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again, Glenn, for coming on, and
always been lovely chatting.
yeah, and being so generous with your time, because I know you're an extremely busy person. If this last, I know, a couple of hours hasn't already made it clear. So yeah, so thanks again, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new stuff, you know, what you come out with next. So I'll be cheering in the stands.
No worries, my friend. That is amazing. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn.